Board Prop 50. Remember Prop 50? It's been forever. IRWM implementation grants. And so I will turn things over to Eric.
Yeah,
And will you introduce the panel and lay out how we're going to proceed?
Sure, I'll go ahead and get started.
Oh, you're going to do it? Okay.
Could I introduce, it's just the two of us, but let this be in no way reflective of the board's interest in this topic, you know.
Right. Felicia is doing drought today, and Dee Dee is giving a speech today. So, and she didn't realize the setup for the agenda, so she was committed.
Yeah.
And Tam will be here.
And Felicia, I spent Friday with her, as I said earlier, and she wants to pass along that this is right up there with one of her most favorite things that we've done. So just want to pass along those good wishes, and then hand it over to Leslie.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Spivey Weber and Board Member Moore. I'm Leslie Loudon. I'm the manager of the Bond Section in the Division of Financial Assistance. We are very pleased today to be hosting this workshop to showcase the many accomplishments of the participants in the State Water Board's Prop 50 Integrated Regional Water Management, or IRWM program. The completion of this program is particularly timely and important given the current drought conditions, as many of these completed projects provide water supply reliability for both small and large water systems. By completing these projects in a timely manner, they're now functioning and able to capture the benefits that we so desperately need in this drought. While we're here today to highlight the successful completion of the many implementation projects completed by our grantees and their partners, I don't want to minimize the challenge that the program participants faced in the implementation of their programs. While the great posters and presentations make this process and the projects look easy, they were not. And we're particularly appreciative of our grantees and their sub-grantees for their efforts to successfully complete these projects. It's a great accomplishment. I'd like to introduce Eric Ekdahl, the IRWM Program Manager for the Water Board. Eric's going to present a brief overview of our IRWM program and the format for the workshop. And then at the close of the workshop, we encourage you to visit the posters out in the mezzanine and talk to the grantees who will be out there with their posters. There's really some nice representations of the project, so thank you. Eric?
All right, could we start the PowerPoint? All right, good afternoon, Vice Chair Spivey Weber and Steve. And thank you all for coming, and thank you for attending this afternoon. This afternoon should be a little bit of a change of pace relative to this morning, and as we kind of go overview and celebrate the conclusion and the accomplishments of the Proposition 50 IRWM implementation grants. Just briefly, a quick agenda. I'll step through some acknowledgments, the background, and kind of give a plug for our new IRWM website that we have up and running. The bulk of the presentation, though, or the bulk of the workshop, will be spent on the grantee presentations. We have 8 of the 10 IRWM grantees giving a presentation. The 9th is presenting a poster but not giving a talk. And we had one that couldn't make it today, Contra Costa County, but they, we still want to acknowledge all the work that they've done. Then following the grantee presentations, we'll have a poster session in the mezzanine out directly in front of the boardroom. We have, I think, 10 different posters, not including the ones that we have from ourselves. And we encourage everyone to stop through and take a look and see what all of the grantees have put together. Before I begin, I've been in this position for less than a year, and so for a program that started in 2002, that means that there are many people who have worked very diligently and very hard to make sure that this program has been a success. I want to particularly thank the active DFA IRWM staff, and if they could stand up when I call them, Jeffrey Albrecht, Brandon Davison, Sarah Gatsky, Kelly List, and Danielle Siebel. Thank you all very much. I also want to thank Carolyn Saputo, the analyst, for all 10 of the IRWMs, which is a tremendous amount of work. And for anyone whose name I didn't call, please don't feel slighted. Just know that you're very much appreciated, and thank you for your work. We also had a number of past RWM staff, Scott Couch and Shala, who have been very important, Laura McLean, who was a past program manager. I also want to acknowledge two people in particular for help putting together this workshop. Jeff Capellis, who's a GIS programmer or analyst in the OEMA graphics unit. He took basically our kind of incoherent ramblings about what we wanted for a website and was able to focus it and actually come up with a product that really looks fantastic. Maria Bazianellis and her team in the OEMA graphics unit did a similar type of project. The 5 posters that you see out front with the one-word impact word, recycle and reuse, were put together by Maria and her team, again, kind of taking our incoherent ramblings and coming up with a really nice project. So thank you to both of you for your work. A little bit of background: the Water Security, Clean Drinking Water, Coastal and Beach Protection Act of 2002, otherwise known as Proposition 50, authorized $500 million for IRWM. The $500 million was jointly administered by the Water Board and the Department of Water Resources. $250 million was given to each agency. From that $250 million, there were a number of projects funded in addition to the implementation grants. There were planning grants, integrated coastal watershed management grants. The Groundwater Ambient Monitoring Assessment, or GAMA, program was funded through Proposition 50. There were local groundwater assistance grants and the implementation grants themselves. Once those projects and costs were taken out, there's approximately $181 million available for the Water Board's implementation grants. The State Water Board and DWR jointly developed guidelines and evaluation criteria for these grants. There was a series of public workshops in 2003 through 2004, with the final guidelines released to the public in 2004. Planning grant solicitation began in 2005, and the implementation grant solicitation began in 2005 and lasted through 2006. It was a 2-step process with concept-level proposals followed by invitation-only full proposals. The first implementation grant was awarded in 2007, and the project has been ongoing ever since. The pace of those projects has waxed and waned a little bit, and there have been some events that did result in a little bit of slowdown, particularly the bond freeze of 2008. Although IRWM was exempted, there was significant uncertainty associated with continuation of state funding, and so some of the projects slowed down. Once that certainty was removed, the pace of the projects has picked back up, and now we're to the point where all of these IRWM grants will be completed. A little bit more background. In total, with that $181 million, we funded 10 implementation grants. So in essence, we funded 10 IRWM regions. $80 million went to Northern California, and $100 million went to Southern California. The implementation grants were kind of a new beast in terms of grant management. Although we funded 10 regions, each one of those regions had as many as 20 or 20 plus component projects. So each one of the regions had many, many other sub-grants or sub-grantees within them. In total, there were 103 component projects. The first grant was executed in 2007. The first 2 were completed in 2012. We had 4 more close in 2013, and the last 4 will be completed by May of this year, at which point the State Water Board's IRWM program will come to an end. This is a table. It's a lot of numbers, a lot of dates. It just kind of gives the general outline, the award totals and the match totals associated with these grants. You can see that the total awards ranged from approximately $6 million for Kings County, which is in the middle, or Kings Basin rather, and the maximum grant award was $25 million. In total, there was approximately $181 million in grant funds available, leveraging over $550 million, or $500 million in total project costs. We've pulled together some program outcomes associated with these 103 component projects, kind of looking at what those gave us. What did we get out of those 103 components? And we've broken them down into 6 categories, and I'll just briefly run through them here and kind of go over some of the highlights. There were 17 recycled water projects funded through the Prop 50 IRWM grants. utilizing approximately $53 million in funds. The result was over 38,000 acre-feet per year of recycled water. In perspective, that's approximately 20% of the recycled water policy mandate for 2020. So that's a tremendous benefit that the state has received through these funds. There were 6 projects that we classified as drought protection, solidifying water supply, helping secure over 45,000 acre-feet per year. There were 9 groundwater recharge projects, directly recharging more than 10,000 acre-feet per year. 26 water supply projects, helping secure, again, over 14,000 acre-feet per year. There were 16 habitat restoration projects, helping to restore and rehabilitate over 2,000 acres of wetland, marsh, and related habitat, and to rehabilitate over 20 miles of stream and riverbank and bed. There were also 29 projects directly related to water quality. Those 29 projects helped keep over 153,000 cubic meters of sediment out of water bodies and helped remove over 85,000 tons of contaminant from those same water bodies. And one final highlight that we like to emphasize, a tremendous amount of these funds went towards disadvantaged communities. There were 26 projects in total that went to disadvantaged community, and approximately $50 million of that total IRWM implementation grant funds. That's about 30% directly going to disadvantaged communities. A quick plug for our new website. When you Google State Water Board IRWM, the first page that comes up now should be this one. It has a new interactive map. You can see in color-coded the IRWM regions that were funded through Prop 50, through the State Water Board's Prop 50 funds. Each component project is flagged with a little kind of drop down, and you can click on any of those regions. You can zoom in, you can look at those specific projects. There's also a drop down. I can't really do a mouse over on this, but you can see kind of in the middle on the right, there's a select project tab, and if you click on that, it lists all of the different IRWM regions, and scrolling over, you can see each one of the component projects. Highlighting or selecting them will take you to a zoom in of that project. You can see there's a project summary, which gives a 1-paragraph description, the total project costs, and then there's a link to a final report, which is a much longer 30-plus page summary of everything that was done. So please check out the website, and we should have it fully loaded in the next week or so.
I did Google Water Board IRWM, and we did show up first. I Googled IRWM, and DWR showed up first.
They have more money. Quickly looking at the remaining format, there's posters out in the mezzanine. We've mentioned them. Please step by, take a look. The IRWM representative should be there and should be able to answer questions if you have them. We'll next move into the grantee presentations. We're actually going to shuffle the schedule a little bit due to something that just popped up, and Tracy Billington from DWR is here, but she needs to go first, so we'll move shortly into her opening remarks or words. And following the complete list of grantee presentations, we'll have a question and answer session here where you can ask questions of us or of the grantees, and then we'll end it with brief closing remarks. And so with that, I'd like to welcome Tracy Billington, if she's here.
Board members, thank you for having me here. I'm Tracy Billington, and I manage the IRWM grant program for DWR. And I've been with the IRWM program for a little while, and so way too long. So I was planning on just saying thank you for the cooperative relationships that we've had with your staff over the years. It was quite a journey for us to. This started out that we were mandated to work together by the legislature, and it actually turned out to be a positive experience that had a lot of beneficial personal relationships, and I think we came out with a better product from having worked together in developing the program. I think it is, the IRWM program has not only shown the local agencies that you can work together on a cooperative relationship, but the state agencies, you're capable of doing that also. And I'm seeing that it is really resulting in changes in the in water management in California, including from the drought response. We're hearing some stories about the relationships built through the IRWM being able to facilitate drought response in some communities. So I think it's overall a very positive experience. We're not quite as far along on getting our IRWM Prop 50 grants awarded, and our projects were shut down with the bond freeze, so that might be one of the reasons. But we funded very similar projects, but just more projects, and so we are taking a little bit longer, but they are coming to fruition. Our projects are starting to, we have about a third of the projects already done, and we're starting to see that we're at the end of the Prop 50 days, and we're well into Prop 84 IRWM. And where we are with the Proposition 84, in case you weren't aware that it has it authorized $1 billion in funding. We've just recently, as of February 4th, awarded $151 million worth of funding to 21 IRWM regions, and we've gotten that money, getting that money encumbered and want to expedite the agreements for the projects that have a drought aspect, and we're working with our grantees on that. Through the drought legislation, we had additional funding appropriated, and we'll have $200 million for drought responses, and one of the reasons I am going to cut in line and speak first and cut out early is to go back and work on what exactly does an expedited solicitation for the $200 million look like. And at that, I'd just like to thank Leslie. Leslie was probably the first person I talked to at IRWM, and I've probably worked through all of them since then. But it's just been a great experience, and if you have any questions for me, just let me know. Thanks.
One question, it's not really a question, but it's a request, and not to be done right now because everybody's hands are full. But over time, let's merge our two websites together, or at least at the project level, because it would be very good for someone just to have to do one-stop shopping. They might go to your site, they might go to our site, but they should see that the IRWM program is much bigger than just one site or the other, and they shouldn't have to try to figure out how to go between the two. So put that on our kind of mid to longer term list of things to do.
We can do that, and also getting it linked to the bond accountability website. Mm-hmm. And then one of the other things that we have sitting around is a more detailed summary report with the facts and figures on the Proposition 50, documenting that we did meet our statutory mandates and providing detailed lists of the projects that the Water Board funded and the projects that DWR funded. But that's one of those you need to free up a little bit of time to get that done. Thanks.
Okay, with that, I'd like to welcome Elizabeth Kraft from the Salinas Valley IRWM.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Spivey, board members. I'm Elizabeth Kraft. I work for Monterey County Water Resources Agency, and I'm here to talk about round one of Prop 50. This is the cover of our FEP for our implementation grant. And the timeline, we've already heard a little bit about it, but it was long. 2002, the bond measure passed. We applied for a $25 million grant in 2005. This board awarded us a $12.5 million grant in 2007. We got the grant agreement in 2008, and we finished them in 2012. A little bit of history on the Salinas Valley IRWIMP. We developed an FEP for the Salinas Basin, which way back in the dark days of IRWIMP, we could do that. It was a similar to a full-blown plan, but you could take the documents that you already had and kind of merge them into a plan. And it also covered just the Salinas Valley, and we had 3 members of the water management group. Goals and objectives, just to show that the same as a full-blown plan, the FEP, we had water supply, water quality goals, we had flood protection and environmental enhancement goals. We had short-term priority projects for seawater intrusion, water demands, steelhead recovery, no surprises on any of these. We had long-term priorities, you know, future water demands, more in steelhead recovery, implement watershed management. The projects that were put forward in the first Prop 50 grant were from 3 entities in the Salinas Valley: Marina Coast Water District for their eastern distribution system, the City of Soledad for their wastewater recycling and reclamation project, and my agency for the Salinas Valley Water Project. Geographically, the projects kind of spanned the breadth of Monterey County. The City of Soledad's right there in the middle. If you go up towards the coast, you'll see Marina, where their distribution system is for the City of Marina and the former Fort Ord. The Salinas Valley Water Project had 2 components. The Salinas River Diversion Facility, which is North Monterey County up by City of Marina, and then the Nacimiento Spillway Diversion or Spillway Modification piece, which was way down in San Luis Obispo County. We travel far and wide. We had a application in for 25 million. We ended up with 12.5 million, so 31.9 million in matching funds and 44.4 for the total project for the grants. The way the project management worked, the Water Resources Agency was the grantee. I was the grant manager, and I was the point of contact for the state board. The subcontractors, Marina Coast and City of Soledad, so they funneled all their stuff to me, and then I turned around and compiled it and funneled it down to Kelly List here at the state board for implementation, approval, processing, and all that. And then if Kelly needed anything, it went reverse order. She called me, and then I called whoever she was looking for, and it went back and forth. So I'll talk a little bit about the projects. The Soledad Water Recycling Project. They were trying to improve their water supply, groundwater quality protection. The project has several components. I'm going to focus on the tertiary facility at the city wastewater treatment plant for today. Here's a picture of their old wastewater treatment plant. They had aeration ponds, percolation ponds there in the center, and that little sandy piece out there in the front that kind of looks like a ribbon, that's the Salinas River. Here's a schematic of what they proposed for their plant upgrades to put in secondary treatment with tertiary filtering capabilities. Here's what it looks like today, well, 2012 from Google Earth. The new plant is off there. It's my right. I guess it's your right, too. They have a BNR process, secondary clarifiers, and they can produce Title 22 recycled water. Marina Coast, Eastern, excuse me, Eastern distribution system. They were looking at water supply reliability, groundwater management to help with seawater intrusion, and water quality protection and management, again for seawater intrusion. I'm going to focus on the 2 new inland wells, which is what part of what their grant did for them. The well 34, they replaced an old well that was been out of service for many years, maybe 15 years because of casing failure. So they replaced it with a new facility that has a 2,000 gallon per minute capacity, I think. And then the second well they drilled, which was Watson Gate well, outside the seawater intruded area. And again, to supply for development with the former Fort Ord building that's going on down there. The Salinas Valley Water Project has several objectives: stop seawater intrusion, balance the basin, meet future water demands. For this grant process, we had two components of that in there. One was the Nacimiento spillway modification, and that was to allow the Nacimiento spillway to pass the probable maximum flood. And to do that, we had to lower the spillway crest. So if we'd have lowered the spillway crest, we would have lost storage capacity. And while we wanted to pass the probable maximum flood, we didn't want to lose storage capacity. So what we did is, on the left, the original picture, the pre-construction picture, is the old spillway. And so we took that lip off, and then on the right-hand side, we replaced it with a Obermeyer gate, which is inflatable. We can raise that and retain the same amount of storage when we need to, but we can also drop it and pass the probable maximum flood. So this is looking from the lake down to the dam. And this is looking back up the spillway. So you can see on the left where they're putting the Obermeyer in, and then on the right when it's inflated, that's what it looks like. We also did some work on the spillway sidewalls there, and you can see that as well. The other component of the Salinas Valley Water Project was the Salinas River Diversion Facility. And so we constructed the same Obermeyer system in the Salinas River with a fish screen or fish facilities, the fish ladder, and the pumping and pieces to make it all work. So here's a construction photo. Salinas River upstream and downstream on the right, and the diversion facility going across it. Here's the diversion facility when it's operating, it's in its up position, and we've got water overtopping the impoundment. And here's a picture of it once it's all done from the same view that you had of the construction view. And I wanted to throw this in just to kind of give you an idea of what the heck we're doing with this. So we release water from the reservoirs, and Nacimiento, San Antonio, it comes down the river to the SRDF. And then that river water gets pumped to the Monterey Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant. And at that point, it's blended with recycled water. Way back in the 80s, 90s, way back then, way before my time, the agency and the wastewater treatment plant built the Castroville Seawater Intrusion projects and the Salinas River Recycled Water projects for that tertiary water. So now this river water is added to that, and it provides more irrigation water to the Castroville Seawater Intrusion project area. So to graphically kind of show what it did, the bars in the dark blue, those are the project wells and how much they pumped in the 4 years before the diversion facility went online. And then the ones on the right are after the diversion facility went online. So those higher dark blue pieces and white space above the light blue ones, that's being made up by river water. And then to show you our first few years of operation of the SRDF and how much water we diverted. Last year was our best so far. It was also our driest so far. And I think we pumped a little over 6,000 acre feet. I can't read the number from here. So to get back to the Prop 50 process, there's lots of words to describe it. I chose long, arduous, and expensive. I must have been feeling generous that day. The grant process was complicated, and it doesn't really need to be, but somehow it turns out to be. And the grantee-sub-grantee relationships, they're tricky. I was fortunate in that we all got along and everything worked out. But as the grantee and being on the hook for the sub-grantees projects, that could get dicey at some point. Like I said, we were fortunate in that we all had projects that we were very interested in getting built and online. So we all had kind of that shared reason to get it done. The good part was we funded some really important projects for the region. The Soledad wastewater treatment plant, They've got Title 22 water. They've gone from a secondary plant that was at capacity to tertiary treatment that now has, capacity for when the city has growth. Marina Coast, they've moved pumping inland, and they've got 2 wells that are outside the seawater intrusion area. Salinas Valley Water Project, we've reduced coastal irrigation pumping, and we've also got a spillway that will now pass the probable maximum flood. So we've built a good foundation for the future for critical projects in the area. And just so you know, we're not done with IRWIMP in Salinas Valley. We have morphed into the greater Monterey region. You remember that little orange strip that was down the middle of the first map? Now you see the big orange piece. That's the greater Monterey County Integrated Regional Water Management Plan area. We've filled in the spaces, and we now have a regional water management group that's about 15 people, 15 different entities. We've been applying and been awarded planning and implementation grants in Prop 84, so we're moving forward. Any questions for me?
Sea level rise, you had identified that in 3 of your projects, that it was to assist with withstanding intrusion, saltwater
Seawater
intrusion.
intrusion?
And so, did it?
We hope so. I mean, we're 4 years into implementing the Salinas Valley Water Project, so we're collecting that data now. The Marina Coast wells themselves, they have moved pumping out of those seawater intrusion zones, and I think last year their wells pumped about, if I got the number, it was a lot. So those 2 wells combined in 2013 pumped about 475 million gallons that would have been pumped out of, known seawater intrusion. So without saying yes, I think it's helped, and hopefully the data will show that as we go into the future.
Okay, if there are no more questions, I'd like to welcome David Orth from the Kings Basin Water Authority.
Good afternoon, I'm back. You can't get rid of me. Actually, let me explain why I'm here. My employer, the Kings River Conservation District, serves as the agent, both administratively and fiscally, for the Kings Basin Water Authority. I've had an opportunity to talk to you about that before. I am the district's appointee to the Joint Powers Agency and was nominated to serve as the Secretary-Treasurer of that organization. Our program manager is also a KRCD employee. Was scheduled to do this, but when I found out that I could save him about 7 hours of travel time because I was already here, I said, I'll take the shot for you, Eric. Eric Osterling does a great job for us, and he deserves to be here, so I just need to make that recognition. Give you a little bit of background about where we're at and some of our formation challenges and objectives, and then end with some highlights on the 3 projects that were funded here. And it's certainly a pleasure to come before you and thank you for your efforts and the staff's efforts in allowing us to move towards our goals. This is the unfortunately common, consistently development of groundwater elevations in the central San Joaquin Valley. This one shows that over about a 50-year period, we've lost a little, it's 5.3 million acre-feet of groundwater storage. This is out of a basin that has tens of millions of acre-feet available to it. But it's still not a trend that we prefer to keep. The interesting thing about this is that in the last 10 years, we've been somewhat flat. If you look at the very last dot on the far right-hand side and you move back 10 years, on a 10-year averaging, we haven't lost significantly additional storage that we haven't recovered. And we're hoping to reverse this trend and show more of that kind of recovery going forward with our IRWM. Our annual average overdraft is about 120 to 150,000 feet per year, and that's a number to keep in mind. I'll come back to it in a moment. So the journey of an IRWM to get before you, to talk to you and thank you about spending money is not an easy one to take. And if you look here, it's 13 years ago that some of our larger, what we call Upper Kings Basin water managers got together with the Kings River Conservation District, and recognizing just the continued trend of and commitment of groundwater and how it conflicts with water quality management, how it conflicts with urban development and some of our environmental and flood management goals, we began a discussion with a great deal of assistance from the Department of Water Resources through what was initially called an advisory panel. Then it moved into a forum where we invited a larger group of stakeholders and interests, and then ultimately in 2009 formed the Joint Powers Agency. We are the kind of the top middle of the Tulare Lake funding area. That cross-hatched red there at the top represents the Kings Basin. We surround the cities of Clovis and Fresno. We have the San Joaquin River there on our northern boundary. And as you can see, a great deal of the Tulare Lake hydrologic region is in fact already covered with integrated planning units. And as I mentioned this morning, we are regularly now trying to coordinate with those other IRWMs in that south end of the valley to talk about other opportunities for collaboration. This is the drill down to the Kings Basin map. Again, you can see Fresno, Clovis, but there are 8 other incorporated communities within this service area. Again, as mentioned this morning, over 120 disadvantaged community units. There are significant trout fishery resources just downstream of the Pine Flat Dam that we've invested a great deal of effort in with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and the local fishing interests. And then the Kings River Conservation District, my employer, happens to be the flood management agency, the local flood project sponsor for the federally constructed U.S. Army Corps of Engineer flood project. So a great opportunity for us to start looking at ways to knit some of these things together and get them out of silos. Our governance structure exists of a board. Every member appoints a representative to the board and an alternate. We develop working groups to work on things from project development to a groundwater surface water model process that we're presently updating with private foundation money to allow us to look more clearly into the future to see what the benefit of our actions are in contrast to just the continued growth and demand upon those limited resources. We use an advisory committee that brings both the members and the interested parties together once a quarter and ask them for input on issues before the board. And by our joint powers agreement, the board is to consider the input of the advisory committee. That's the way we get the non-governmental agency voice into our process, and that's all supported by the Kings River Conservation District staff. Extremely diverse participation. I think we're down to 17 or up to 17 members now. These are public agencies who have elected to both reimburse a portion of the development costs and then make an annual dues commitment. There are lots of interested parties that are both public and private entities covering the full gamut of stakeholders, everything from environmental justice to environmental organizations to, you can see the Farm Bureau there, the Fresno State University. We've got an incredibly diverse but well working together machine today, I think, in bringing everybody together. And a significant amount of other participation, as you can see from the state agencies and other interested parties. All told, there's about 55 names on this list, excluding the other participation, and every one of those people have voices when we get together on our quarterly basis. So our planning goals, not surprisingly, were to halt and ultimately reverse the overdraft of our groundwater and provide for sustainable management of our surface and groundwater within the basin. to address water supply reliability, maintain or enhance operational flexibility, and reduce system constraints, address water quality, look at flood protection, and again, be very sensitive to and enhance our aquatic ecosystems and wildlife habitat. The pyramid there is the way we've structured our integrated regional water management plan process. We just recently updated that plan through a several $100,000 effort to bring it to a higher threshold, and these are kind of our pyramid of goals and values. So our regional approach to this has allowed us to really address some specific challenges. We talked this morning about disadvantaged community water supply and wastewater issues, but looking at all of these things more comprehensively in an integrated fashion. So beginning to look at the way we manage flood flows and flood projects, not only just for avoiding property damage, but also now for groundwater recharge, for water quality protection, and even for environmental enhancement. Strong commitment to water use efficiency and urban water conservation. The only way we're going to balance that overdraft, frankly, is to effectively combine our ability to capture those flood flows when they're available and get them into the ground. And there's a limit financially as to how much of that you can do just because of the sheer volume of flood flows that come. And so the flip side of this is a continued strong commitment to conservation. Doing a significant amount of basin level monitoring. We're the local CASGIM reporting agency to DWR, but also have implemented a real-time groundwater monitoring pilot project so that we can look daily at some specified groundwater monitoring sites within the basin to see more real-time what's happening to the basin under whatever conditions exist. And we're doing a great deal of water quality, land subsidence, and are modeling, updating our model. And then finally, all of this only works because we spend a lot of time talking to our community and continuing to reach into the stakeholders that haven't yet figured out what IRWM stands for and bring them to the table. We've had a significant return in investment. Eric showed you earlier how the Prop 50 program that the State Board has administered, leveraged within the Kings Basin. We've taken $54 million in state and private grant foundation funding, and that's significant as we started to build reputation and successes with the proposition funds. We saw some private foundations come in and say, we'd like to help. And so some of that money is being used for monitoring programs, for groundwater modeling, and some other projects. That's all been leveraged to nearly $90 million in planning and implementation projects. This spreads across the map. There are about 15 yellow boxes, or 13 yellow boxes here. Several of them are the Prop 50 projects that I want to just highlight here real quick and then finish. The three projects that we funded under this program that make up part of that 50+ million in state bond funds that we've utilized. The first one was the Jameson Pond Recharge Expansion Project. This was a project that the Fresno Irrigation District brought to the integrated planning process. Their share of the grant award was $2.4 million. The total project cost $4.4 million, and it consisted of expanding an existing recharge basin to add another 60 acres. So we more than doubled its size and captured an additional recharge capacity of about 4,000 acre-feet per year. Significant for a couple of different reasons. Fresno Irrigation District is the entity that works very closely with the local Metropolitan Flood Control District and the cities of Clovis and Fresno, and have been a significant partner in allowing the city of Fresno and Clovis to get or Clovis particularly, to get off of their dependency on groundwater by bringing surface water in and doing some exchange programs like this, where we've created some additional flexibility in the system that without the funding, without the project expansion, would have been limited. Second thing under this Prop 50 grant was a $1.1 million award to the city of Fresno to assist them in expediting their move into the 21st century and to meter the residential deliveries. This project particularly had a significant leverage, ratio, as you can see, $1 million translated into $10.7 million worth of meter installations, and allowed, by our estimates, approximately 8,500 acre-feet of ground surface water demand reduction through the metering, and that'll test out over time to see how accurate that is, but a significant part of our conservation commitment. And then finally, a project that the Alta Irrigation District submitted and was awarded. It had a $2.4 million grant component, about twice that in the total project cost, which is excluded from this slide. It was a groundwater recharge and banking project that took some vacant land, converted it to a 47-acre recharge facility with extraction wells, monitoring wells, and some real-time monitoring. Here, the Alta Irrigation District is working very closely with the local disadvantaged communities of Cutler, Orosi, and East Orosi, and we're able to take this supply, create flexibility within their system, which now has them using some of their surface water entitlement off the Kings River as a future prime source or primary source of water to those disadvantaged communities. So the project allowed us not only to capture groundwater for recovery, but also do a surface groundwater quality swap with the disadvantaged communities. The last thing, just to close, would like to say that I agree with the previous speaker that there are challenges in all of this, but I would say that our experience with the state board staff was very, very positive, extremely supportive, engaged, represented whenever we needed them there, both in terms of our processes and the public discussions that we had. Grantee and sub-grantee relationships, as was mentioned earlier, are challenging, but we've developed some sub-grantee agreements that seem to get it done, and that's been helpful to us. And then finally, to come back to that annual average overdraft of 120 to 150,000 acre-feet per year, this grant alone allowed us to, if you did the math real quick, allowed us to grab 14,000 acre-feet against that. So about 10% of our annual average overdraft was addressed just through this program, and we are certainly appreciative. So thank you very much.
You know, some of the, it was a startup program, you know, we were getting used to it. I mean, I wasn't here when it happened, but could you attribute some of this to just the learning curve of just the IRWM process in general? I mean, I think Elizabeth brought up some legitimate concerns, and certainly I know our DFA is very, our ears are wide open to hear ways we can improve our administration. But is there a bit of sort of a learning curve, both at the local level and the state level, that we were all grappling with?
I would say absolutely. If you look at IRWMs, they've evolved from Prop 13 through Prop 50, then into Prop 84, and so we didn't have a static target that we were trying to shoot. It was moving and growing, and the legislature was changing conditions, and I think that created incredible challenges for all of us. Maybe some complexities that over time we will learn not to replicate. I will say, however, that the whole structure of an IRWM really necessitates a prime lead agency who can come submit the grant application, but most likely isn't going to want to be on the hook for the individual member projects. And so that creates, you know, an extra layer that's challenging, but part of the way the whole program is set up, the way the legislature envisioned it, and we just have to figure out how to make that work more effectively.
Is there any interest in exploring more sustainable funding sources besides grants and philanthropy, or bonds and philanthropy?
Yeah, there is in our area for sure. We've come to recognize, and part of our IRWM update that I mentioned is that, you know, we can't be solely dependent and successful based on water bond approvals of our California voter. So we're looking at different ways to deal with that. Prop 218 is a challenge, and it's one of the things that I know is being discussed in the legislature and within the administration right now, and we're going to be very interested in helping move that discussion along. You know, there's been discussions of different types of revenue structures, which might include a sales tax adder for water supply, like we've seen done in Fresno County for zoos and transportation. So some thoughts about pursuing that. Not an easy thing to do, but something that has some potential. And then, dare I say, the concept of a public goods charge on water is something that we do not support statewide, but we think regionally, there may very well be some opportunities for the local agencies to come together and create something that's dedicated to the local needs, and we've got to create flexibility to allow that to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next I'd like to welcome Lynn Rodriguez from the Watershed Coalition of Ventura County.
Oh, Chair. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Spivey Weber, members of the board, staff. My name is Lynn Rodriguez, and I'm the project manager for the IRWM program in Ventura County. Our region is primarily the county boundaries with a slight variation on the Malibu Creek. There we go. And Sue Hughes, who you may also know, is really our grant administrator, lead person at the county for the implementation grants. I do more the planning side and the stakeholder process side. So I may be a little bit less knowledgeable about the specifics of projects. I am going to cover the projects, and our poster has a little bit more detail if you want to get more. Next slide, or I get to do it. So county boundaries. Our region is characterized by 3 major watersheds, and we do all of our stakeholder process sort of from the watershed up. So I'll talk about that. As I mentioned, a slight portion of the Malibu Creek watershed is actually in the greater LA IRWM region, which is still in the same funding area. We have about 831,000 people. You may know that agriculture is one of our major industries in Ventura County. We're the 9th highest producing ag region. We were accepted as an IRWM region in 2009. We started very actively in the IRWM process back in 2002 before the passage of Prop 50. We were active in the Water Bond Coalition that helped sort of get this process going forward. So we've been very excited about IRWM since the beginning. We had planning and implementation grants through Prop 50, and we've continued in Prop 84. So just a couple of the highlights of our regional challenges. This looks like probably a lot of other areas' regional challenges, and I'm embarrassed to say I forgot to specifically call out groundwater overdraft. It's part of our water supply limitations. That is a major issue in Ventura County. Similar to our neighbors in Santa Cruz and Monterey, we share a lot of, in Santa Barbara, we share a lot of similar issues. We are somewhat dependent on imported water. The southeast end of the county brings in 100,000 acre-feet of metropolitan water through one of our wholesale water agencies. We have a lot of salt contamination in our groundwater basins, and we're working very hard on that challenge. We have some very flashy flooding issues in 2 of our watersheds in particular. Well, actually, all 3 have experienced that. Water quality impairments, seawater intrusion, invasive species, you name it, we've got a lot of those challenges. And, of course, making sure ag has the supply they need to continue operation. This is sort of where we started back in 2002. We had a lot of questions to ask ourselves about how are we going to work this process. And all of those questions that you see flying onto the screen are the same questions I think all of us had to address when we first got started. Some of the interesting things in whose house, who manages this? The answer to that question in our region is the county is the actual, we provide the support for that. And so the CEO's office actually, which is maybe different than other areas, you'll see, Public Works or some other entity, but in our county it's the CEO's office, and we have very strong support of our Board of Supervisors in our process. That has helped us a lot. I like this slide just because it really shows this is everything that we're dealing with, and it's not easy, it's very complicated, and just about everything that you would be dealing with on your board and the regional boards and DWR, it's all there. And we have added elements in the guidelines for IRWM to address other things like land use practices and land acquisition and some habitat restoration issues that are maybe foreign to some of the water managers in the previously focused on water management only. We've been very successful, as I said. We've so far brought in, and I will focus on Prop 50, but I wanted to put this out there, that so far we've generated about $172.7 million between all the planning and implementation grants we've received to date. A lot of that is local commitment of $61.7 million, and I'm sorry, 11 million in our local match. So, and that question that you asked, Vice Chair Spivey-Weber, is we are very closely looking at where are we going to get funding to go forward, because we have a lot more projects and needs in the county. I'm going about this a little differently than some of the other speakers. I wanted to focus on what has made us successful, and Kelly asked me. Kelly List is our grant manager. We've had a great relationship with Kelly, and we really appreciate all the support we've had from, and then Scott Couch and others before that. We feel that in our area, what has really helped us is we've kept it very non-political, and we focus very much on consensus. We're a little less structured, I think, than maybe some of the other regions, but we've had a good working relationship throughout our history dealing with water management issues, and we layered IRWM on top of that long-standing history, which goes back to our 208 Water Quality Management Plan that the State Board was involved in back in the early 80s. So we've had a long relationship with the State Board and working on these issues. The county's role is not to vote, but just simply to manage and provide oversight. And we've had a lot of unity in the region around what our key issues are, so it hasn't been too challenging. We haven't had as much conflict as I think a startup region might have if they hadn't already been working together. Just wanted to point out that we did receive an award from our local APWA because it was the first time that they had seen a project that really focused not only on engineering and project solutions, which is what APWA is all about, but also bringing in the integrated component. So I would say that IRWM has taken hold in a lot of people's minds as this is an alternative way of managing our resources that's very successful. Just very quickly, this is our governance structure. As I said, our three watersheds, the Cayugas Creek, the Santa Clara River, and the Ventura River, have very independently operating watershed committees that do watershed management and IRWM sort of simultaneously. A lot of strong support in those groups for what works for them. It's harder for them to look at what's really important in another watershed, although we have certainly a lot of regional projects and discussion about the regional needs. We have a steering committee comprised of 2 members of each of those watershed committees that meets about 5-6 times a year, and then the WCVC, which is the Watersheds Coalition of Ventura County. That's really our overarching committee, and that's everybody. And we periodically, a couple times a year, everybody gets together. And that is the final decision-making body for applying for grant funding, picking the suite of projects that we select for funding, and adopting our plan, and things like that. Our funding comes from 21 funding partners, and those partners provide funding as needed to supplement the grants and to match the grants and to keep our program going. We have about 65 active members and an email list that's hundreds and hundreds long with a lot of diversity. I didn't put in a slide of all of the diverse interests, but we've got pretty much everybody at the table. We'd like to do outreach to get more sort of citizen, general public folks, but it's hard to get them excited about things like this. But I think with the drought, we'll see more of that participation. I forgot to mention when I talked about our population that we have 10 cities. So we work very closely with all 10 of those cities, and about 7 of them also have water supply as part of their charter. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we select projects. First of all, it's not a pay-to-play in the sense of suggesting ideas. Everyone in our region has a voice, whether or not they're paying into the program. Again, political influence, we've tried really hard to keep it away from, the elected officials coming to the table and saying, here's my pet project. So it stays pretty much at a non-political level. It's very informal. I think some people have come as guests to our meetings and said, I don't believe that you came out with that suite of projects in that easy manner without, a lot of falderall around, who's got the best project. We agree on what is the most sensible thing for our area, and then we move forward with that suite of projects, whatever it is for each grant program. So it's both bottom up and top down kind of simultaneously. And the watersheds do submit project ideas, and they get fleshed out and further vetted by the steering committee.
In that process, it seems like if you've been doing it for a while, you'll have perhaps more trust in,
yes,
because you'll have the list of projects. Not everybody gets selected, obviously.
Right.
So then they may get refined based on comment, and then as the participants see their projects finally get approved and actually implemented, I mean, what kind of timeline? Is it similar to what we're talking about here, about a decade of proving ground to get to that point of feeling more informal? And or you have any comments on the time?
Well, our stakeholders have been, although the habitat and restoration and nonprofit entities are a little newer to this table, the water districts and the other water management entities and the sanitary districts and the flood control districts have been working together since the early 80s when we did our first water management plan. So yes, it took a lot of time to develop that trust. I would say that the trust is not 100% there on all parties. We're still working on some issues. Over the years, you know, the county has done something that might have upset a stakeholder or vice versa. So there's been, you know, some rocky ground, but I would say for the most part, everybody realizes in today's world we have to work together to manage our financial resources as well as our natural resources. We're not going anywhere without each other. And I think that that has helped build the trust more quickly in recent years. And I would say for the sustainability of the IRWM program going forward, that need to collaborate and that need to join forces on projects. Nobody can be a lone wolf. There just isn't the resource for that anymore.
No, that's well stated. I appreciate you touching on that. And also, are the folks who've been around a long time growing more trusting of the utility of non-governmental
Yes.
groups and seeing results and then
Absolutely.
wanting to invest more in that?
Yes, absolutely. And we've got some great projects, not only in Prop 50, but in our first two rounds of Prop 84, where we're trying to do a better job of integrating all those benefits into one project or multiple benefits in one project. So to touch on our Prop 50 projects, we had 11. And you'll see on this list, I kind of highlighted in red what the key benefits or the key focus of each of those projects were. Salinity management is a huge issue in the Cayugas Creek watershed. And so they have a major project, a salinity management pipeline, and there's many elements to it. So actually we've been picking off pieces of that project through all these rounds of funding and other sources. It's a $90 million price tag on that whole project. But there's desalters associated with that for the communities that will feed into it, and those are getting built. We had recycled water project. The County Waterworks District is a separate board of directors, but served by the county. Staffed by the county. And then the Resource Conservation District with invasive species removal, tamarisk and arundo. Arundo is a huge issue in all three of our watersheds. Santa Clara River in particular has a really major effort. And the upper watershed has it too, and we work closely with that region even though we're in a different county. Groundwater treatment in the Simi Valley area, some of the high perched groundwater and the salty groundwater is being treated to great benefit. 2 septic to sewer conversion projects that have had a tremendous water quality benefit. So those were really valuable, and El Rio is a disadvantaged community, which is in the unincorporated area. The city of Fillmore, not quite disadvantaged, but really close. They built a new treatment plan and wetlands partially with this money and with a lot of other money. That was an expensive project too. That's very beneficial. We've seen on the Santa Clara River 3 new treatment plants go in the last 10 years, and that's been huge from a water quality standpoint. The Watershed Protection District did a whole watershed protection plan for one of our watersheds, the Ventura River, and a lot of little mini sort of projects associated with that, monitoring and drilling some new wells. And then the San Antonio Creek Spreading Grounds project, which is, I want to point this out really quickly. This is sort of a joint thing that has happened between DWR and the state board that I'm very happy to report that we had some challenges with that project finishing from the state board's grant. So we were able to convert that into a phase 1 and phase 2 project, and DWR allowed us to pull it into our round 1 implementation grant under Prop 84 so we could complete the project. It ran into some water rights issues and some, I think, fisheries issues. We got that squared away, and that project is now being completed, and it took DWR and the state board working together to work that out, and we were really happy to see the outcome. And then the last one is a very small mutual water company that had some significant issues. I'm going to show you some pictures now of some of these projects. This is accepting our check. We appreciate that. It sits on Sue Hughes's wall to this day. So I'm just very quickly going to run through the pictures on this slide. The one of particular interest, I think, is the ocean outfall of the salinity management pipeline, where they did an amazing technological feat of pulling in pipe from offshore, connecting it to the outfall, and it goes out, I'm going to say 2,500 feet. I'm not sure if I have that number right, but that was a big deal. They towed that, I believe they towed that pipe, I don't know, several miles in the ocean. It was a pretty exciting thing to see. Simi Valley's treatment plant over there, and then the Fillmore treatment plant is the one on the bottom. I'm not going to give you a lot of statistics about each project because that's out there on the poster. Not very exciting to see the roadway, but El Rio, the community, the left side photo is of the septic to sewer conversion project, and that's a disadvantaged community that got to see sewer connection for the first time. It's very exciting. Arundo removal in the Ventura River watershed, and the Watershed Protection District was involved in that. Then we have the just the tank for the recycled water project, but that has generated a lot of new supply for us, and I'll show you some of the outcomes in the next slide. I don't know how well you can see that, but and there's better pictures or more pictures on the poster, but on the right is the Senior Canyon project where they had just a really falling apart. It's amazing that that survived as long as it did in that condition. It's hard to tell, but pipes are laying on each other, and Kelly has been out to that site more than I have, and it was phenomenal how the thing was falling apart. And you'll see on the poster an after picture of what it looks like today. So very exciting. And that's a picture of this. The lower one is the San Antonio Creek spreading grounds before picture. So just very quickly, the primary results of our 11 projects. We served some disadvantaged community needs. We did some tremendous water quality improvements, enhanced water supply, had flood protection benefits, some significant environmental restoration, and we're making progress on climate change adaptation. And then the last two are more sort of global benefits of the collaboration among all of the diverse stakeholders. All of the speakers are probably going to talk about that, and the fact that we've come up with some cost-effective and integrated solutions. Oops, sorry. Just very quickly, this is just from Prop 50 projects, 10,000 tons of salt removed from, so that's a portion of what the slide that Eric showed earlier, 40 tons of nitrates diverted, and 10,322 acre-feet of additional water supply. And then environmental restoration, 13 acres of invasive species removal, that's significant. And some wetlands creation, which was primarily that Fillmore treatment plant product that I talked about. And then some of the things are a little bit harder to quantify, but certainly we've improved our stormwater capture and reduce some floodway issues. So lessons learned, definitely all about the relationships between the people. That's what really makes it work. It's a technically challenging and complex issue, but if the people don't trust each other and they can't work well together, you're not getting anywhere. So it takes a lot of leadership. We believe IRWM is workable and needs to be continued. We plan to continue doing that together, regardless of whether funds are available from state sources. It's been very valuable to our region, and the collaboration has been beneficial all the way along. And as somebody mentioned before, for drought response, we're already together working on these issues. So what's next? We're completing our IRWM plan update, continuing to seek sources of funding, both from bonds and from other sources, continuing to enhance our watershed planning. We've got several watershed coordinator positions going in those watersheds, and they're really working hard on more specific action plans for activity that can supplement what's going on in the IRWIMP. And we look forward to working with the state board again in the future if you're involved in some of the future water bonds, and we're very supportive of another water bond with IRWM funding in it, and we hope to be able to continue our success going forward. So thank you.
The revolving loan fund is also a source of funding. So have you used that? And
some of our members have, and we're working through our plan update and through other avenues to sort of collaborate more on the funding. The IRWIMP process has been pretty focused for now on the IRWIMP bond funds, but yes, that's something that some of our members have actually tapped into.
yeah, and in both funds, I mean, both the drinking water fund, I know in Region 8, the Chino Basin, they have money, I think they got $52 million from the revolving loan fund from drinking water to do desalters.
Right.
So
Yes.
put that into your
Yes.
funding.
Thank you.
All right, next I'd like to welcome Mark Norton from the Santa Ana Watershed Consolidation IRWM.
Just a few months ago that Vladimir Putin, in an op-ed in the New York Times, famously wagged his finger.
Look a little more interesting, I think. Well, we'll try to do a better job there. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Spivey Weber and members of the board. I'd like to give you an overview of the Santa Ana watershed efforts, working with the Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority and our stakeholders, what we've done under Prop 50, and then I'll touch on, oh wow, our one watershed, one water. Our watershed is the largest coastal stream system in Southern California. It covers 2,650 square miles. We cover 4 counties, primarily the western portions of Riverside and San Bernardino County, and the northern portions of Orange County, just a sliver of LA. We have about 6 million people in our watershed. It's anticipated that this region will continue to grow. In fact, the California Department of Finance has indicated that Riverside County will be one of the fastest growing counties for the foreseeable future out to the year 2060, which is pretty remarkable. I guess we had that growth prior to the downfall in the economy, but it's springing back. We're located just south of the LA area, a little bit to the west of the Mojave and Coachella Valley areas, and just north of San Diego and South Orange County. Here's a projection of the population growth, 4 million new residents out to 2050. It'll be a challenge to supply water for the needs out in this region. We are still very dependent upon imported water. We have about 15% of our water supply coming from the Delta. That water is very high quality water. We need that in order to accomplish our water recycling and also to address the blending needs for our brackish groundwaters. We have about 60% of our supply coming from groundwater, and so we are seeking to leverage and reduce our dependence on imported water, but we know that it will be an important mainstay into the future. The Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority really has been involved with the field of integration and going holistic. That was a common phrase back in the 80s. You'd often hear that from EPA and others. We've been at this actually since the 70s. We were formed back in the early 70s, and collaboration is really what we have sought to do for decades. We fortunately have been able to bring parties to the table to work on common issues, to reach a consensus, and it seemed natural that this integrated regional water management process would spring forward from our efforts in the past. We work with stakeholders, water agencies, flood control agencies, disadvantaged communities, tribes, nonprofits, all different types of organizations in our watershed. When we look at integrated projects, we are really seeking to accomplish all these. This is our ultimate type of integrated project. Sometimes we fall short on some of these, but we try to get as many of these integrated together as possible. Something unique there is that we're really insistent on multi-jurisdictional approaches where agencies, organizations work together. If they're going to propose a regional type of project or something that addresses something within our watershed, they need to have some type of MOU or agreement together. They can't, as a single agency, continue in the silo approach of yesteryear. The 21st century demands that we work together, we collaborate together, and have projects where we are able to leverage the minimal resources that we have to accomplish what we want for the future. Focusing on Prop 50 and what we were able to accomplish there, we had 7 projects. They were focusing on local water supply reliability, addressing invasive species and habitat restoration, wastewater treatment, water recycling to benefit the watershed. Using the $25 million that we were provided from the state, we were able to leverage that and utilizing a local match into total program costs of roughly $139 million. We've been able to accomplish increased groundwater recharge, recycled water, removal of salt, and improving water quality, more reliance on local supply, removal of the high invasive Arundodonyx plant species, and restored natural habitat. I'll go through each of our projects in a little more detail. Here's an overview. We have a pretty good spread across our watershed of the projects, 7 projects that we funded through this funding round. I'll start off with the Eastern Municipal Water District's San Jacinto Valley Regional Water Reclamation Project. This project sought to expand an existing treatment plant called the San Jacinto Valley Regional Water Reclamation Facility to 14 million gallons per day, brought it to the Title 22 effluent standards, and they completed their work back in May of 2013. Generates about 10,000 acre feet per year. They had documented 10,000 in just 2012, so it's showing that they're going to continue to be able to realize increased water supply reliability. Next project there is with the Inland Empire Utilities Agency. This is a regional recycling water program. It constructed storage and conveyance facilities. They completed their work back in July of 2009. Again, they were able to leverage their funding to a $18 million project. There's a picture of the storage tank that they were able to build for recycled water. Generates 29,000 acre feet per year, increased water supply reliability. Next up, we have the Orange County Water District's Burris Pit Recharge Basin. This is a stormwater recharge project, captures that very important resource of water that ordinarily would be going to the ocean. Completed back in January 2011. Again, they were able to leverage the grant funds effectively with local resources. Generates 22,500 acre feet within these two basins of additional recharge. We had a couple locations for the Arundo removal and habitat restoration. Removed an invasive species, completed their project in March of 2013. Project also was able to utilize some local resources. 930 acres of land was cleared in the riparian areas of Riverside and Orange County, and it provides increased stream flow and groundwater recharge. Up in the San Bernardino Valley Municipal Water District area is our central feeder. Phase 1 constructs a 4-mile, 78-inch diameter pipeline, pump station, and a new 510,000-gallon reservoir. Their work was completed back in December 2008, and it provided a lot of local funding to support this very critical infrastructure for water transfer, and improves their reliability, and also is an important component of a conjunctive use water project. Out in Western Municipal Water District, they have a project described as the Chino